Good afternoon and welcome to Fish Hawk Live. I'm Chris Larson, and today I'm joined by Captain Pete Alex from Vision Quest Sport Fishing. Pete, welcome to the show and thanks for being here.
Good afternoon, Chris. Glad to be here.
So it's January right now, and in January, the diehards, the people who are really into it, people like you, obviously still very interested in kings. I think a lot of other people may be interested in curling up by the fire or maybe going out and doing a little ice fishing right now. But I think it's fun to pop on, talk about some salmon fishing, talking about some trolling, and get people excited about getting out there and getting on the water right now. I'm sure there are people that are respooling lines and just getting organized right now. But I called you and I said, hey, let's talk about preparation. You're like, no, let's talk about something more interesting and more fun. Let's
We
talk about
wanted
fishing.
we wanted one more than one person to show up, so a little bit of a topic change.
Yeah, so we're going to
That's
talk early spring kings. And Pete, what does that mean to you? What time of year does that mean to you when we say early spring kings?
well, that's going to be that end of April period till maybe middle third week of May. Early being end of April onward.
End of April, early May. And where do you start? Where's the first place that you're going to start going out and chasing these kings?
Well, normally we start over at on the Canadian side for the King of the Lake spring tournament over there. So typically that's the last weekend in April. So we journey over there, short ride from Wilson to St. Catharines area, usually that a few days before the last weekend of April to start doing that skinny water fishing and preparing for that weekend tournament.
Yeah, so skinny water, what does that mean? When you say that was kind of my next question is yes, you're fishing out of Wilson, you fish out of Wilson, that's where you do the bulk of your salmon fishing, but you're not frequenting the same places in that early May, late April that you do in July. So tell me about what that water looks like and where you're going.
So what we call skinny water is typically inside of 40 or 50 feet. So a lot of that early king fishing will start, 20 to 30 foot of water, especially on the Canadian side. Unless we get these unusually warm winters that are advanced. So sometimes right out of the gate, we're fishing deeper water that time of year, even though it's early April or late April, early spring. But it looks like we have a traditional winter going on. So under those conditions, generally we're inside of 30 feet, especially over in Canada or near the Niagara River up on top of the bar where there's warmer water coming out of the river. So to me, that's the skinnier water. And sometimes, like last year, that skinny water was really on the Canadian side of the Niagara River, and it was in a lot of areas along the southern shore of Lake Ontario. A lot of kings got caught inside of 30 feet or 20 to 40 feet of water early spring.
Yeah, so I think people who maybe just do the bulk of their salmon fishing in the summertime, maybe they drop their boat in Memorial Day weekend, they pull it out, Labor Day weekend. Fishing for salmon in 30 feet of water sounds crazy to them. Why are those fish in that water at this time of year?
Well, a couple reasons. Primarily, it's warmer. And on our end of the western end of Lake Ontario, we've got the influence of the Niagara River pumping warmer water from Lake Erie. So a lot of that water comes out of the river and migrates along the shoreline, and of course it's shallower, so those water warm up quicker. We've got stream discharge going on. Again, so that water is more fertile. It's colored. Colored water is huge to successful spring salmon fishing. So you've got warmer water, you got colored water, and you got creatures to eat in there. So three for three, in my opinion, on ingredients to catch spring kings in tight.
So those fish coming to those areas around St. Catharines, are those kind of local fish or do fish tell me about how they move throughout the system on Lake Ontario? Are they coming from other spots of the lake to that area that time of year?
Those fish are migrating from the deep waters of Lake Ontario. They winter out in that deep water, and the spring, starts to occur. We get into that April, May period, a lot of those fish are coming out of those deep haunts and migrating towards shore to get with the program, start eating, and get into their life cycle.
So if somebody is from, let's say they fish on Lake Michigan, they're not going to obviously go to St. Catharines to fish. What are they looking for on their home water that would be similar to what you're looking for on your home water? What should they look for if they want to kind of use the same pattern and the same program on their home waters?
Well, first I would look for that colored fertile water if it can be found. Typically, it's true of most fish. Brown trout love that water. Salmon like that water. Not every salmon, but a lot of them do. Again, you're going to find bait fish in there. Bait fish can hide in that colored water. They can hide near discharges structure. So you're going to be able to see normally schools of bait inside that skinny water. So bait, colored water, and of course you got to read your fish hawk surface temperature and look for that warmer water inside.
So you're taking a look at that temperature. You're looking for that warmer water that time of year. What does the temperature typically look like when you're out there that time of year?
We're going to be low 40s to mid 40s typically in that April period. And then, of course, it's going to start bumping up to hit that 50 mark as we get into May or towards May.
Okay. All right. Tell me about what does your program look like when you're going to go out and target these spring kings?
So when we're targeting kings, we'll say inside of that 50 feet or 30 feet, slide divers are extremely effective. Running, slide diver off each side of the boat, very effective with either spoons or stick baits. Lead core is huge. We run a lot of planer boards, planer board lines in there using 2 core, 3 core, 4 core, 5 cores, sometimes 7 if we're deeper. So lead core is huge because skinny water, kings are a little skittish, especially after that morning bite. And then, we'll run a shoot rod. And then sometimes we'll mess around with some high lines, some surface lines or body baits running in the top 15 feet, especially in the morning period. Those kings are up perusing, and you can catch some high in the water kings in that spring period. And then it seems like they gradually will start to drop down towards that middle or bottom. So then we start lowering our presentations. We might get rid of the 2 cores and 3 cores and load up on 5s or 7 cores. Maybe we get rid of the slide divers and we'll dump a wire diver in and keep it towards the bottom.
We're visiting with Captain Pete Alex from Vision Quest Sport Fishing. If you've got a question for Captain Pete Alex while we're live here, go ahead and drop it in the comments, and we will get that to him and see if he can answer your question for you while we're up here live with Captain Pete. You talked about body baits there. Tell me a little bit about what you've got on the business end of those lines when you're running them this time of year.
Well, if we run body baits, it's normally the 4.5 or 5-inch stick baits. Ones that only go down 4, 5, or 6 feet. We'll put those on short cores, and we'll run them behind slide divers in that skinny water. It seems like body baits take a lot of fish in that shallow water until they bump out deeper, and then they're just not as effective. We like
Tell me about. Yeah, go ahead.
And we like running a lot of DW mag spoons. Many salmon have died off the DW mag spoons, and then we'll mix in the regular size too. But these fish are coming out of that deep water. They're hungry. They're looking to eat, so they're not as picky. But a mag spoon, whether you fish it off a core or a rigger or a diver, is tough to beat in that spring period, whether it's April or May.
Very good. Vermont Fishing Adventures joining us today. This is a great audio and video. Always great to hear what Captain Pete has to say. Tell me about colors, Pete. What are you running for color this time of year, and how does it differ compared to what you may run in the summertime?
Well, it seems like we all got our spoon spring favorites, and unfortunately, some of these spoons don't work as well once you get into that mid season. Why? Who knows? Maybe it's just the water clarity is different. The spoons just aren't as effective. But we run. I'll give you a few topics. I had to write them down. Like the Dave Salmon Slapper is a great one. The Chartel, the Chartreuse Glow, silverback spoon. Again, super good spring spoon, but tough to catch a fish on it. From summer onward. But dynamite spoon in the spring. The Rambler, spoons that come in whitebacks and silverbacks, like the Rambler and the Glow Frogs. We run a lot of whitebacks in the morning. It's a high vis, and some of that water is dirty, real murky brown. So those whitebacks really show up, especially in the morning. Give them something they can see. So we dump a lot of those whitebacks in during the morning, and we let the fish tell us when they're done eating whitebacks. Usually, you'll see they'll start chewing on them, and then you dump your goldbacks or your silverbacks in. The glow, like I mentioned, the glow frogs are great. Purple frog is an outstanding spring spoon, but again, it kind of fades as the season goes. The Full Nelson, it's a Fish USA custom, whiteback, great for dirty water. We ran the Green Dot Rod Father a couple years ago when it came out, and it was an absolute fish mowing machine in that skinny water. It was the DW Rod Father Greenback. It was custom from Fish USA. So there's a few.
All right, very good. Tell me about the leads that you're running for the lead core. Maybe if you're running, are you running any kind of riggers, or since you run slide divers? What's your length of leads, and what are you using for leaders?
Well, let's start with riggers. We do run riggers in that spring period. We like shorter leads in the morning always, even though we're in skinny water. 15, 20-foot leads. Why? Is because these fish they're looking to eat, so they're looking for noise, turbulence, your cables, your weights. The boat itself is actually causing fish to come in and see what's going on, so they think it's bait. They're not sure. So we run those 15, 20-foot leads off our riggers in the morning. We might stretch a couple a little further back, and then eventually, as the day goes on or morning goes on, we'll start dumping those leads back 30, maybe 50 feet at the most. So those are rigger leads. Diver leads, our slide divers, of course, that's already a stealthy presentation. So we'll dump that 50 foot back before we engage that diver on those, and then we'll set the distance out depending on the water and the depth of those fish. And then again, our cords are 2, 3, 4s, 5s, and 7s. So they all have varying degrees of depth. And leader length on cords, we run fluorocarbon with 20 to 30-foot leaders on those cords.
Excellent. We got another question here coming in from our friends in Vermont. For someone traveling and trailing a boat one trip a year to make it to Lake Ontario, where and when would you go?
Well, my peers won't like this answer, but I'm going to say Western Lake Ontario in May.
Western Lake Ontario in May. I kind of had a feeling you were going to say that, and
it's like going to western part of Lake Erie to catch walleyes in the spring. That's the place to be too.
Yeah. Tell me about what do you have, Captain, that's maybe something that people don't think about, that most people don't use. Is there some little rabbit out of a hat that you like to pull, that something that you do a little bit different than what other people do when you're out chasing these spring kings?
Well, I guess my rabbit in the hat is I don't like to fish around too many boats per se. So, and I use the bite as a barometer. So, not every salmon is inside of 30 or 50 feet that time of year. So, spent many a salmon that have died with me on the outside of the pack of boats in that spring, fishing maybe just outside that fertile water in that clear water sometimes. So sometimes the bite's tough in there, and the guys aren't producing a lot of fish, up and down that shoreline area. The rabbit in the hat is to point it north and fish in that clear water and fish a little deeper. And sometimes you find that rabbit in the hat.
Very good. Is there something that you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked you yet when it comes to spring kings?
Well, I think staying away from boat traffic's huge. I think it's very important to pay attention to the clues, like I mentioned, presence of bait fish, maybe. Definitely look at your water temperature and pay attention to the water clarity. Water clarity changes, Lake Ontario, sometimes day in and day out, depending on what kind of blow or wind direction. So you can go to the left, as I'll say, one day and fish green fertile water. You might get a northeast wind overnight. You go left again, set up in the same spot. It's dark. You can't really see the water. And as soon as it gets light, you're going to see that you're in gin clear death water. And time to get out of there. So you got to pay attention to a lot of clues, details, things like your fish finder, of course, but we don't mark tons of salmon inside skinny water in the spring. So we're looking for those clues I mentioned a couple times already, more than, fish on our screen per se.
Yeah, you said the fish can be attracted to the sound of that boat and to the sound of everything, but they're not coming in and getting right underneath your boat. And that's kind of why you're working your boards out there, just to spread that whole thing out, and maybe bring them in to within, maybe 40, 50 feet of the boat, but you need to get that spread kind of out wide of the boat.
Right. Riggers can be super hot in the morning in the spring. Like they're the studs. And the reason is those fish are hungry. They are getting drawn into the noise, the commotion, and they're looking to eat. So running a rigger program can be super deadly that first couple hours in the spring. And then a lot of times they cool off like an ice cube. And why is, the sun's up, they get a little bit more boat skittish. They've already eaten, so they're getting a little smarter. And then you'll notice sometimes your slide divers or regular divers are kicking in. And of course, your board lines will start kicking in. So day in and day out, kind of the same thing.
Yeah, you talked about running those divers. You talked about running your downriggers and lead core. Do you run any copper or weighted steel or anything like that?
We like weighted steel. It's a lot easier to work with. I converted to weighted steel several years ago, and no turning back for me. It's just easier, just much easier to play with. It's almost like it's almost like lead core, I guess, but heavier. So we will run. I don't really keep anything shorter than a 200 weighted steel on my boat. Anything that I want to target, any fish I want to target above that, lead core typically. So once those kings move out to that deeper water and deeper in the water column, we'll start using weighted steel, 2s or 250s, 300s, all the way up to 4s.
All right, I know you're well known as a guy that likes to go single hook, and you got a new product that you wanted to talk about today from Atomic. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I've been an advocate of using tandem single hooks for my meat presentations. Treble hooks cost me a lot of money in tournaments over the years. And so I kind of went away from trebles, which is against the grain for most, which is fine. I kind of like it that way. But I've been using tandem singles for several years now. It's done a couple things. It's put a little more money in my wallet through tournaments. It's made me put a lot more fish in my boat, especially with charter customers. And so I'm all in on double singles. A lot of guys who fish with me know that, and they've seen the results. So Atomic, Tom Allen from Atomic Manufacturing contacted me earlier this winter and asked me if he was good with basically duplicating the tandem single hook rig. So he came up with the harnesses, which are pre-tied tandem hooks on varying lengths of leaders, 18-inch, 48, and 72-inch, to put with attractors or meat rigs. And he's between him and Fish USA, they partnered to put out a handful, I believe 12 meat rigs pre-tied with these tandem harness rigs. So I'll show you a couple here. He named them the Terminator rig. That's a great name we came up with, actually. So these are varying lengths. That's a 48-inch, for example, that would go on an 8-inch attractor, typically clean. Just put a slide of bait head on it, put a snap swivel, and attach that to your flasher. But this is what they look like. These are number 4/0 hooks. So he did a great job tying these, or his guys did. And I think it's going to contribute to a lot of less salmon in Lake Ontario in the future.
And that's something that you guys are going to be at Niagara coming up in February, and just about a month from now. And that's something that they'll have at the Fish USA booth right there in Niagara.
Correct. And for all the guys that signed up for the Niagara Lots of Salmon School, first of all, thank you for signing up. For this year, we sold out relatively early with 170 seats. Tom Allen from Atomic has donated basically a pack of these for every attendee. So he donated 170s. They'll be in the bags for the guys. So hats off to Tom for doing that. And yeah, they'll be available at the Fish USA booth as well. And I believe Tom Allen's booth from Atomic Manufacturing.
Yeah, so if you're looking for more information on the show, it's Greater Niagara Fishing Expo.com. But again, you can go to Fish USA and to Atomic and get more information on that particular product. And Captain Rob Westcott stepped in and said, as a fellow competitor, I'd prefer if you went back to running single treble hooks on your meat rigs. Thanks in advance.
I got to deal with him a lot, since we're doing these schools together. So that comment's par for the course for Rob. So
yeah,
you got it. I'll go back to single treble hooks after you do.
just for Rob.
Yeah,
So you guys are going to be doing that salmon school to be. Go ahead, Pete.
I got to add that Rob is one of the guys. I'd say he's pretty set in his ways. He's definitely OCD, which I could appreciate OCD. I had a typo on my announcement that we were having this 3 p.m. thing today, and I said a 2. I had a typo, and I'm surprised he didn't text me and notice it and say, you gooned up your announcement with a typo. He pays attention to details. Rob does. So anyway, he's one of the guys I was surprised that converted. Maybe not fully yet, but I think so. From single trebles to the hooks, he saw how they do work, and I think you're more confident using them as an angler, especially in a tournament.
Yeah. Well, Rob's a good guy, and you're going to be doing that salmon school with Rob at the Niagara show here in February. We talked about that a little bit, but you guys also will be doing a salmon school out on the east end of Lake Ontario. And if you want to find out more information about that, you can go to GreatLakesSpecialEvents.com. But Pete, tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing on the east side after the Niagara show wraps up.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. Casey Prisco, also known as Superman. I gave him that title or nickname a few years ago. Not necessarily for his fishing ability. He's got a little ways to go. But it was more for his ability to run back-to-back doubles and these giant stretches, which are grueling. So I named him Superman for physically being able to do that as often as he does so. And he's a pretty good fisherman. But Casey Prisco from the east and west end will be doing that with us. Captain Rob Westcott will be back again doing that, and of course myself. And then we've got Captain Roy Letcher, who's a west end guy who goes east to fish with Casey's fleet down there for a little while. He'll be participating as a special guest speaker, both in Niagara, and he'll be doing a little bit in the Pulaski, the Great Lakes Trolling School up in Pulaski, New York in March. So this will be the second annual event there. Last year it was a one-day event. This year we had a lot of questions and a lot of inquiries about other species. So this year's school will be doing a 2-dayer. We call it Salmon Saturday, which will be primarily on kings and cohos on Saturday, and on Sunday it's going to be multi-species Sunday. We're going to talk about catching brown, steelhead, offshore, inshore, as well as lake trout. So a lot of guys have an interest in catching multi-species, not just king. So we are going to do that solely on Sunday, and it's going to cover, from meat to spoons to flasher flies to fish locations, all kind of great things. So we have a power weekend in Pulaski coming up in March.
Awesome, Pete. Yeah, we'll put that website back up on the screen. It's GreatLakesSpecialEvents.com to sign up for that. They are sold out for the Salmon School at the Greater Niagara Fishing Expo, but they have some awesome seminars going on all day long, all 4 days. So if you want to go and learn more about salmon fishing, really highly recommend you going to the Niagara show and checking out the daily seminars that are free of charge at the Niagara Expo. So you can go in there, spend a day doing the different seminars if you don't have a ticket yet for the Salmon School. And if you really want to get some of what you'll see at that Salmon School and you're unable to attend the Niagara show, you can go to that East End event, see Pete, see Casey, see Rob, and get that stuff. We'll also have all three of you guys on our show, our virtual fishing show throughout the weekend at the Niagara Expo as well. All three of you guys will be co-hosting for a segment, so I'm excited to have you there as well. Pete, appreciate you joining us this afternoon and talking a little salmon with our folks. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you about that you want to get to before we say goodbye to you today?
I guess not really, but I will add, attending these salmon seminars are just a great way, to meet people. You get to meet a lot of your peers. You get to meet a lot of really good anglers and talk fishing. They're fun. They're great things to do to get out of the house. At the Niagara show, they've got a ton of really good seminars to attend. It's a really good fish head show. Most of the show is geared towards fishing. You get really good show specials there. You get to see a lot of people. You get to see manufacturers that the manufacturer, but the owners are there at these shows. You can shake hands and talk product with them. So attending these shows is really good. Plus, it's a good way to get out of the house this time of year. And then the salmon school we've got going on at the East End. Again, we felt there was a need to do it on the East End. We got a great school in the Lake Ontario Trout and Salmon Association, the one that they do in Niagara every year. Great school, great 4 days for that show, aside from the school. So we started, or Casey wanted to do this show on the East End. There really was nothing going on down there, and a lot of guys didn't want to travel to the West for these shows or the school. So we started that one on the East End, and it was a great turnout last year. But again, attending these shows or seminars is a great way to meet people. You pick up a lot of good tips from guys that have been doing this a long time. Little things that you overlook that you never knew, or you thought was impossible to do, but it is possible. So these are great things to do. They cost money and they take some time, but your time on the water is valuable. Your investment in all your gear, your boat, in tournaments adds up. So, learning and taking advantage of seminars and all, it's a great way to cut through the learning process and might help you put a few more fish in the boat or earn a paycheck in a tournament. So I recommend it.
Yeah, that Niagara show is really nice. You got guys from Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York all coming to it, and they can go across the bridge there, and the Canadians spend a lot of time over there as well. Anthony Wood, Canadian fella, says, "You look like a new man with no mustache. Happy New Year." So we'll
Always
probably
good to hear
see
from
Anthony
you.
again here in February.
Always good to hear from you.
Yep. We got Muskie Man jumping in. He's got a question about going back to spring kings. At what point do those kings move deeper? Is it water temps? Is it color? Is it bait? What causes them to move out of the shallows and go back out into the depths?
That's a good question, and I'm going to say all of the above. There's times in the spring you can catch them in 30 feet, and a guy will be out in 120 feet catching them. So again, if that in the west end of Lake Ontario, we like that green water. So when that green water, that fertile, warmer water starts to expand, it moves out of 30. Now it's out to 200, 250, where the Niagara plume puts that water way out. It'll put it out in a half circle and it'll come back in. You can catch kings in 300 foot of water in the spring. And I've done it many times if you got the right ingredients. Again, some temp, you got colored water, maybe bait. Whereas you might be in a different part of Lake Ontario or not too far from that Niagara plume and have all those ingredients. And you might be in 40 feet catching those kings. So everything's a little different. But if you find those three ingredients, and it could be 300, it could be 30 feet of water, it could be in between. So the sky's the limit in the spring. Those kings are coming out of cold water. You'll catch them near the surface, and you'll catch them 120 down in 40 degree or 42 degree water in the spring because they've wintered in 39 degree water all year. So that cold water, ice water, they've been acclimated to it. So you're going to find kings in the ice, and you're going to find kings in that warming waters of Lake Ontario that time of year. So there's not a definitive answer. They could be spread out, and really you got to play your cards. You got to look for those ingredients. Sometimes the inside sucks, so you got to point north and troll out and stay in that fertile water. A lot of times you hit the cold, clear water. If you go too far north, Usually the brakes come on then, the bite stops. It's ice. You turn the boat around and come back and find that green water again and start hunting.
All right, he is Captain Pete Alex from Vision Quest Sport Fishing. Pete, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with everybody. And we really look forward to seeing you again here in about a month in Niagara.
See you, Chris. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.